Hello. Some spectacular finds have turned up in surprising places. In 2016, two metal detectorists discovered 3 gold torcs and a gold bracelet at Leekfrith in North Staffordshire. Buried not too deep, only about 6 inches deep, and close together. They reported their find to the Portable Antiquities Scheme Finds Liaison Officer in Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery, and an archaeological survey of the site was carried out. There was no evidence of settlement, no sign of a grave, so the conclusion was that these were a ritual deposit, a votive offering. The bracelet and one of the gold neck rings are made of twisted wire. The other 2 torcs are made of sheet metal. The gold content was tested using a technique called X-ray fluorescence, and it's roughly 18 karat gold. The rest of it is made up of silver and a few trace elements, but the particular mix, when it was analysed, the curator at the British Museum concluded that these had been made in Central Europe and dated the finds to round about 400 BC from the style and the decoration. So we're into that Celtic cultural period known as Tène. But the question then arises is, how on earth did these objects get to the Staffordshire Moorlands from Central Europe? None of them are particularly large, and it is likely that they were worn by women. So maybe they were traded, but is it possible that women from Central Europe were marrying into the community in North Staffordshire? An inquest was held in Stoke-on-Trent, and the coroner declared the finds treasure under the terms of the Treasure Act, and they were valued by the Treasure Valuation Committee at the British Museum £325,000. And the Potteries Museum raised the cash, and the finds are now on permanent display. Now, I can't possibly talk about finds in Staffordshire without mentioning the Staffordshire Hoard. Discovered in 2009 by metal detectorist Terry Herbert, who was working in a field belonging to Fred Johnson, the farmer at Hammerwich near Lichfield. And he began unearthing gold objects in the plough soil. He got in touch with the Finds Liaison Officer at Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery, who immediately contacted the national representatives of the Portable Antiquities Scheme. And these items had probably been buried in a container, much deeper than they were found. The container had been lost. The field was on a slope, and as it had been ploughed, the soil had eroded downhill, bringing these items closer to the surface. It had also spread them out over a large area. So the excavation was difficult, and the technique was to lift blocks of earth to take back to the laboratory for unpicking and conservation. Around 4,000 fragments have been found. Gold and silver, some copper alloy, predominantly gold. I mean, the whole hoard weighed 6 kilograms, over 13 pounds, and 5 kilograms, so about 11 pounds of it, was gold. And it's war gear. There were sword hilts, there were sword plates, there were pommel caps and related items inlaid with garnets. The sword blades were not here, so they'd been recycled in some other way, or left, or perhaps just too hefty to carry. It had been the valuables that had been taken. And these had been stripped from warriors after a battle, and we have a description of this taking place. This is from Beowulf, the Anglo-Saxon epic poem. And it says this: "For one warrior stripped the other, looted on Yentheow's iron mailcoat, his hard sword hilt, his helmet too." So we have this graphic description of things happening that are reflected in the finds of the Staffordshire Hoard. About a third of the fragments were identified as belonging to a high status helmet. there was a strip with warriors on and a fitting with a terminal in the form of an animal, reminiscent of the nose piece on the Sutton Hoo helmet. There was an eagle mount found as well, which is very similar to an eagle mount on the Sutton Hoo shield. And in 2012, so 3 years after the original find, when that field was ploughed once again, further fragments turned up, including a cheek piece for the helmet, which turned out to be the missing piece of the jigsaw and enabled a reconstruction and then a replica of the helmet to be made. There were also 4 or 5 Christian crosses. Nothing in this hoard could be described as female. No other Anglo-Saxon features in the area. No buildings, no burials, no sign of battle. And dating the hoard has proved difficult, but there was nothing in the finds that could be securely dated to after 650. And the consensus of opinion is that this hoard was buried sometime between 650 and 675. Now the area was part of Mercia at the time, militarily aggressive. These are turbulent times. There's constant battles for power and territory between Mercia and Northumbria and the other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Battles for domination. Now the king from 633 to 655 was Penda. He was succeeded by his son after a brief period, 2 or 3 years, of Northumbrian dominance in Mercia. So succeeded 658 by his son Wulfhere, who was then succeeded by his brother Athelred in 675. So these are the leaders of Mercia at the time that the Staffordshire Hoard is likely to have been buried. And the crosses are the only items that aren't clearly war gear. The largest of the crosses, possibly an altar cross or a processional cross, but could well have been brought out in front of an army to lead that army into battle, particularly if we're talking about Christians and pagans. There's a replica reconstruction you can see alongside. Now the fact that this had been folded suggests some disrespect and no regard for Christian religion. Now that would point us to King Penda. He was resolutely pagan. His sons Wulfhere and Athelred were Christian. There's an interesting item, a gold strip inscribed with a Latin passage from the Vulgate Bible. It appears twice, it's in Numbers, and it opens Psalm 68. Rise up, O Lord, and may thy enemies be dispersed, and those who hate thee be driven from thy face. So again, it sounds as though this is something that might be carried into battle by a force of Christians seeing themselves fighting pagan, heathen forces. The style of the lettering, the uniform size, the equal spacing, and those little triangular serifs on some of the letters again is consistent with this date of 650 to 675. It has got a misspelling. The coroner held an inquest September 2009. The hoard was declared treasure under the terms of the 1996 Treasure Act, and then the news was out. Tremendous worldwide interest in the find, and a site was set up, an internet site. It's staffordshire.org.uk, had 10 million hits in the first week. The Treasure Valuation Committee at the British Museum valued the find at over £3.25 million. Now, raising the fund to acquire the hoard is only stage 1, of course, because the research and conservation is going to be a costly process, so there was further funding to be raised. And the hoard is now jointly held by Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery and the Potteries Museum in Hanley. The gold quality is very high. We know of no Anglo-Saxon gold mines, so this is recycled gold. Old objects and coins that have been melted down and put to a new use. The small garnets probably came from the area which is now the Czech Republic. The large garnets will have come from India or Pakistan, traded through the Mediterranean. And it's interesting that garnets come in different shades, and you get some that are quite pink, but predominantly these guys like the red ones. They're the ones they go for. And these little pyramidal objects that are inlaid with garnets, they've got a slot underneath and leather straps that have gone through, and these would have been used to tie your sword and your scabbard to your belt. Seems fairly certain that this deposit was a trophy hoard. It's battlefield loot, it's booty. But the circumstances in which it was buried, well, they remain tantalisingly elusive. Now, I'm going to stay with Anglo-Saxons and gold and garnets in the next session, but I'm also going to look at a rags to riches story of an Anglo-Saxon woman. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is published.